Frankie here. Today I am joined by Box One, Philly, to talk about experiences and knowledge on breaking. Box, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Man, thank you for having me, bro.
Of course.
All right.
Born in Philly, breaking since '09, and I know you've previously mentioned how the Gathering in Philly was one of the first events that you attended when you first started. Could you start by first telling us what is it about this event? What is the significance of it? And what do you remember about yourself during that time when you were first attending?
Well, the Gathering is the longest running hip hop event in Philly. It's been going on since mid to late 90s. Started out as an MC event, then slowly transitioned into like an all hip hop event. Obviously, I came in '09, so things had already been established. You know, there was already like legendary events that have taken place there. Yeah, when I first got there, man, I was coming from like a subculture of breaking. So like that was my first time experiencing like actual breaking, like traditional breaking in my face. So I never forget, I walked in and I seen Hannibal, from another b-boy from Philly. I seen him doing barrel windmills, like windmills, no hands. And I was just like, oh wow, like okay. Like at this time, I thought I was the first person in the world to do flare swipe. So when I seen that, it was just kind of like a reality check, and I didn't even dance that night because I was so intimidated. So like I walked in, there's like a stage on the right and there's like a dance floor and it's just mad people. And, you know, I went with my group. We were the best in, like, our little subculture. So we were going in there like, man, we about to run the Gathering. We going to do this and that. Walked in, saw that, sat down.
Right. Subculture. What do you mean by that?
The style of breaking I was doing is like a traditional Philly style. It's more like a bastardized style of breaking. It's sped up. It's done to, like, the traditional, like, the party music you hear nowadays, like the Little Uzi, I Just Want to Rock, like with that drum line, you know, it's also derivative of Baltimore club music. There's a certain pattern that the music sticks to, and it's fast paced. We do the Wu-Tang to it. So we were breaking to that. So we didn't really have the traditional foundational moves of breaking. We were just doing fast top rock in a very Philly way, coin drops and flares.
So to tie it back into breaking, did it have an effect on your overall style even until now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would think so. A lot of people from my city, when they see me break, they like mention that about it. Like, yeah, you know, he still got the Philly in him, you know what I mean? So that was definitely my early roots. I wanted to stick to that because I wanted to bring something different to the table.
What do you remember about yourself as a beginner breaker? So you have this inspiration from the Gathering, seeing Hannibal doing barrels and such. What do you remember about your mindset for training and getting ready for those battles, and who are you inspired by?
My mindset back then, I was really pretty much all in. I was living in Delaware with my mom. I was born in Philly, moved to Jersey, moved to Delaware. I was doing high school in Delaware, and I wanted to dance, and that really wasn't the place for me to be able to do it. So moved back to Philly with my dad, with the intention of I'm gonna be the greatest b-boy ever. Going to the Gathering, getting gut checked like that, having to bring my head out the clouds and like ground myself and come back to reality. It was motivation for me. At that time, I was somebody who was just so singularly focused on achieving whatever he wanted to do that when I went home and I was by myself, I just trained, and I trained hard to the point where I wasn't going to school. I was like missing mad days of school. I ended up dropping out for a year intentionally, because I found a school program where if I went for a year, they would give me my diploma and money to go to college. So I was like, I'm just gonna drop out now, train for a year, and then I'll go to school, get my diploma, everything will be all good. That's how my mind worked back then. But yeah, I was just super focused, super dedicated. I practiced 3 times a day. So I was practicing like 9 hours a day at one point, just really getting it in. Yeah, I was just super determined, and I feel like everybody around me knew that. And yeah, I feel like they could all attest to that. That's just like where my mind was.
For the past few interviews that I've done this, I feel like this is becoming an overall theme. In the words of Eddie Shells, I love how he described this.
Shout out Shells.
Yep. In breaking, you just can't beat time. You just cannot beat the number of hours it takes to be able to make meaning out of this. And for dancers that want to compete at a high level, I'm only saying this from the outside. I'm not at that level. But what can you speak to for younger people that want to be able to roll with the highest level of breakers in terms of the number of hours and being, like you said, singularly focused?
I think in that regard, somebody who I would give to them to be like a muse is somebody like a Kobe Bryant, right? Philly. Yeah, look at the way Kobe approached his training and how dedicated and how regimented he was, right? You know, there's a clip of him like speaking at a seminar where he's like, oh, you know, I could wake up at 8, do my training by 9, 10, blah, 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 blah. But if I wake up at 4, you know, I've got an extra 2 hours per day. So that makes it, 14 hours a week. And then by the end of the year, you do the math, right? I think that's really how you need to approach this. You need to be your own worst critic And you kind of have to approach things with the mindset of measurable progress. This is what I preach to my students. So you kind of have to put yourself on a timeline where it's like, okay, say week 1, January, I can do 2 flares. I'm gonna try to shoot for 3 or 4 by the end of the month. And then by the next month, I wanna double that. And you have to keep yourself and hold yourself accountable and just really be disciplined in your approach, right? Because I think what Shell said is very valid. No one can beat time. You know, they say it takes 10,000 hours to become a master of something, right? You can't cheat that process. You got to put in that time. And something else I always say to my students is, it doesn't matter if you're a fast car if you're going in the wrong direction. Just as important as it is to be skilled and talented, it's also just as important to be focused and meticulous in your approach and what you're doing and figuring out the path towards the goal that you're trying to reach.
It brings a lot of clarity for us to be able to think of it that way, but I guess my question here is, as a young person, did you have that kind of precise thinking, or was it more just that young energy?
I would personally say that I was focused that way. Mm-hmm. I think my young energy came out in the more negative ways of just being a young person growing up in the inner city. You know, I'm getting involved with things I shouldn't be getting involved with. I'm hot-headed. I have crazy temper. I also have this thing about like defending people I love. I'm an older brother, so all my life I've been like defending people who are behind me. So I've always carried that with me. The improper restless energy came out in that aspect. But when it came to dance, I was no games. I'm here to train. I'm here to be the best. My teacher, that's how we ended up building our relationship. I came to his summer program where he was teaching, and I was like, what's up? I need them rounds. He's like, you ain't ready. Torched me doing basic stuff, and it kind of just, again, shattered me. And I had to just like ground myself. But then we walked to like McDonald's for lunch. I'm trying to be like you. I'm trying to be where you at. He was like, yeah. I was like, take me under the wing. And he was like, okay. That's how that started. So, you know, it started off with me being super focused and just learning to ask for help.
We're going to react to some of your older footage. Now, I don't know the last time you saw any of this stuff, but we're going to roll through some of this footage anyway.
I tend to cringe at this stuff. Oh, man. Rhythmic Damage, man. A true Philly gem of an event. Shout out Fox Boogie, Freaks of the Beat. Boom, boom, dum. Nice. Yeah, take my time. Figure out what I'm going to do because I don't even know. Hoorah does power. Let's do some power. Dang, I had air flare back then. That's tough. All I got is baby freeze. Let's check it. Oh, nice. Let's go, Dirty Bird. Rhythmic Damage was a big event in our city. Stoned by UPenn, Freaks of the Beat, the B-Boy Club there, Fox Boogie. When I first came to the scene, like after leaving like my scene, the Philly scene, this was like the first jam that I knew about. This is probably 2-3 years after my first time there. So I was kind of just like focused. I think I got invited to do this instead of like doing prelims. So it was a big deal in our friends group and in our crew. It was kind of just like, yo, bro, bring it home. Yeah, I definitely approached this with just a mindset of like, I gotta win, I gotta represent for the city. Yeah. And funny enough, that's kind of like what I did throughout my entire career. It was never really for me, like it was, but like it was more so the people I'm representing, the people who were believing in me, the people who have been supporting me since the beginning, right? You don't wanna feel like somebody's investment in you is wasted. So it's kind of just always putting this pressure on myself to deliver for everybody else. And again, I have that complex. I have like this hero complex, right? So it helps me to be able to dig down deep because I know that it's not just about me.
When you have a purpose that is beyond just your own personal gain, you tap into a certain power.
I agree.
Hoorah, from this footage specifically, he was on fire. He was killing it. He had an early round with antics, super nats. That battle was crazy. Because I was watching this footage for him, and then all of a sudden you get to the finals. Who is this guy? So going back to what we were saying before, this is 4 years of intense training. This was 2013. Yeah. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. The skill definitely grew over the years. You know, I was talented. You know, I grew up flipping since I was like 8 years old. I had the talent for breaking, but I didn't know the ins and outs, the foundations. This was really me just applying myself and preparing myself. Like I took losses before this to get me prepared to win this. And at the time, Hoorah was a household name, you know what I mean? Shout out to Hoorah, that's my bro. Honestly, like I wasn't even thinking about who my opponent was or anything like that back then. The only person I was thinking about, honestly, was Frankie, because again, this is like me and my super complex. From what I've heard, Frankie was a student of Jigs, and Jigs and my teacher, Stun One, did an exhibition battle years ago. And I felt like jigs got the better of my teacher, so I was like, oh, I gotta get him back. I gotta, it's generational beef. That's why, like, if you watch the battle with me and Frankie, it's like I went like dumb hard. Again, I had this like mystical mission in my own mind.
And to talk about your particular approach to the dance at this time, the foundational power, that was a big focus for you early on?
Yeah, when I first started, like I couldn't like freestyle, I couldn't dance. I was just really good at power moves because, that's what we focused on in like that Philly style. So I was doing power both ways. I could do flares both ways, windmills both ways, all of that stuff. But it was just really about developing my levels. Here you can see it, like I'm clean, I have it under control. At that time, like power was my thing because I was still understanding the dance from a cultural perspective, right? Because I feel like a lot of people, the dance doesn't change for you until you have that cultural side understood. It's easy to come in and learn all the moves that have names, right? Because it gives you something to work towards. You can just write down a list of moves that you find on the internet and then learn those moves one by one. But once you start to understand what you're representing culturally and how the music is the main idea, and then like your moves are kind of just like the supporting cast of it, it kind of changes you. And I see like, a lot of people get caught up in like the real B-boy phase where it's like, oh, I don't do power moves. I'm all about footwork. I'm all about style. You know what I mean? Then they do it wrong anyway. Yeah, this was like the melding of that time. Like I had the power so I could rely on that, but I was also learning to understand dancing, being present, presenting my moves, learning what patterns are, how to put my patterns together, how to change levels, how to be original, realistically. That's what it comes down to.
One observation, again, coming from a part-time b-boy, take this with a grain of salt. B-boys that approach the dance from the more foundational building block perspective, get your power and your freezes down early on, and then you maybe develop, like you said, that more cultural aspect. I have a theory that you can kind of pick out a 10-year dancer that started that way versus someone who maybe just went all in on style.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, if I was to like push one type of narrative, I would honestly say like, and I say this for kids, push them to get their power first. Because once they have that like body control and they start to develop those minute muscles, it makes it easier down the road because you can just like build them up from the age of like 10 to like 13 of just straight power, right? And then you start to get into like culture, music, things like that. So now they have the ability and now they're just developing like technique.
And it's game over.
And it's done. It's over. It's over, bro.
Jumping a few years into time here, Beast Coast in Phase 2.
Oh, that was a good one. Where the hell's Nick been? I haven't seen him since this battle. Hey, fresh off the beers. In the pajamas. Smack. Reset. Oh, another Gumby. I'm lost. Oh. Shout out Mach 5.
You like those rainbows, boss?
Yeah, man, I told you, gymnast, man. Flipping all day. And it's like, it's an easy, like, dynamic move to just throw in, not waste any energy. Makes it look big. I used to have a problem with, like, repeating those. That and worms, man. I had to get out of that.
I like this particular round because, given the context of it, huge crowd, huge stage, you're getting the crowd reaction, but at the same time, you're not necessarily so deliberately trying to blow it up. You're not doing a triple twist flip. Even though it's funny, I say that because you have Tata and then Philly had the little trade-off.
I got Tata A-Rod, boy. I can't be beat. Come on now.
Having those kind of rounds where I feel like that's when it gets really dope. When you're not necessarily trying to elicit a crowd reaction, but the way you do it, the way you're on point, you get that reaction anyway.
I mean, honestly, like, I was just not there mentally. The day before, because I think this is day 2, the day before, I did the prelims for the one-on-one, and I didn't get selected. And, like, there was obvious people who I should have been selected over, but, you know, politics, things like that, whatever. At this point, I was just, like, in a rough space in my life. Poverty, different things going on at home. It was just a real rough time, right, dealing with, like, alcoholism. The day before, this is, like, the phase when I first started saying, like, I'm retired, because I felt like people who I was beating in battles were getting the opportunities I was, like, working towards for years, right? And it was just super discouraging. And it kind of just left me feeling like, well, what's the point then, right? Like, I'm never going to really get the chance. Whatever, I'm done. I'm out of here. So, yeah, first day, didn't make it past prelims. I was like, I'm not going back. I was at the crib with my man, Max. We was drinking like 7 in the morning. Get a call from Tata. He like, yo, bro, Hoorah hurt his back, bro. You got to come down here. I'm like, what? He like, yeah, you got to come down here. I was like, all right, I'll be there. So I literally just like Hung up, was like, bro, we gotta go to the event. So then we drove up there. I'm in my pajamas, as y'all can see. It's a white t-shirt, sweatpants. I just put a hat on. I showed up. I told Tata, like, I was like, yeah, bro, like, I'm lit. He was just like, all right, bro, like, we just gonna do what we do. When you say, like, just not trying to intentionally blow it up, make it a big deal, that approach just came because that's just really how I was feeling, honestly. I was already like, this is stupid, I'm over this. I'm just gonna do my thing, have fun. It ended up being a really good moment for me because I have people talk to me about this battle. I think we battled 7 commandos after that. I stood out there as well. That was a really rough period in my life. The fact that I got something like this out of it inspired me. Hopefully people hear the story and they get the backstory. It'll inspire them.
Can you talk a little bit about mindset then, based on what you're saying about where you were mentally from this point to maybe the year after, if we like think about 2017, 2018? Because you were repping hard 2017, 2018. Did the mindset change at all for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think after this, I started to get people reaching out, you know, trying to book me for things, giving me opportunities to battle, things like that. And yeah, I think that was like a real big turning point because I signed with Monster in 2017. So, you know, this was kind of like a, I guess like not an audition, but like I do believe Jeremy and Moy saw me at this event. Jeremy tells me all the time, he was like in the crowd and he was just like, yo, who's this box dude? And he had somebody next to him like, let's go box one, baby, box one. And this is like a sign from like the little Philadelphia party dance group. Like we had a crew called Knockout and we used to do this for Knockout. So there's people in the crowd doing this because like my city loves me. And yeah, I guess that's how like I got on their radar. Next year, 2017, they hit me up with the idea of doing UK champs with the team. And yeah, that's kind of what led to that.
So 2017, we're not actually going to show UK champs. I wanted to show this particular clip. Now, I tend not to show battles that you didn't win. This particular round, I just thought was just so fresh. And it could have gone either way. It depends on what the judges cared about on an individual level. I think most people would give that assessment.
That's how it usually goes. Shout out to Vero. He's always somebody who's just been like locked in battles, bro. Anytime I've seen that guy, he's just like not joking. Yeah. Okay. Response. All black murder suit, boy. I think I threw up before this battle. This is me fresh off of abandoning my airline ticket back to the United States. So we win UK champs. Like I said before, I felt like everybody was getting opportunities that I wanted. One of those opportunities being to go to Europe, go overseas, because, you know, my crew, the old heads from my crew, Illidale Flav, that was always the goal they were pushing for me, right? They're like, bro, you got to get overseas. You got to go overseas. You're going to change your life. You're going to make money. You're going to do this and that. So that was always my goal. Once I got the opportunity to have somebody fly me over there, which was the UK champs battle, I was just like, I'm probably not going to get an opportunity to be here again. So I'm just going to stay. I'm going to make a bunch of money. I'm going to win a bunch of battles and I'm going to fly myself home, right? Because I thought it was that easy. So this was like the first battle here. I came, I showed up, got my monster stuff on, murder black outfit. I remember the first battle I did was against my homie Razzle. This battle had like a weird concept where it's like, all right, they pick a name out of a hat. Whoever they pick the name out the hat, you come up and then you point at who you want to battle. And then the person you call out gets to choose the amount of rounds between 1 and like 3. So I come up, they pull my name out the hat. They're like, oh, box one, you know, American. They're like, who you want to battle? I was like, I don't care. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't care anybody. Let's just go. Then they got to pick somebody, bro. I was like, give me a dude in a yellow jacket. He's like, well, I was like, because he's the freshest here. He's the best dressed. And he was like, oh, okay. And he was like, how many rounds? And I was looking at him. I was like 1, bro, because who wants to do multiple rounds? Like, right? You know, after getting the backstory from him, he's like, yeah, bro, like, I thought you were saying 1 round because you thought it was only going to take 1 round to beat me. He ends up picking 3. I'm like, bro, why? Like, why do we got to work this hard? Like, let's just do 1 round apiece and, like, best man win. He wants to do 3. So we ended up doing 3 rounds. Boom. Now I'm like hung over at this time and stuff, alcoholism. This was the battle after that, so I was already out of it. But yeah, did my best, had fun. I feel like this battle could have went either way.
I seem to like your footage from after you've had a little bit to drink.
Nah, that's not something I want to promote. That's why I speak about it in that light, because it's not how we're supposed to be. We're like athletes. Give yourself the best chance for success, bro.
One thing that you're describing about this game of breaking, right, especially if you want to compete at the high level, and I can only listen to the account of these stories. Even the top level breakers, what I hear is even if they win battles, it's financially, it's not ever easy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, prize here was probably like $500, which in the grand scheme of things would have went a long way, because I was out there doing street shows at Leicester Square for like a couple pounds, you know, 50, 60 pounds a day, you know, and that was my only income because I don't work there, I don't live there. So I'm doing that, I'm teaching whatever classes people could find me, workshops, different events in the area. So like winning this would have helped me, but that's the game. If you're gonna bet on yourself, you gotta take what comes along with it.
We're fast forwarding into time here. To the present.
The present.
Retro Flow 10-year anniversary.
Shout out Bombi. Everybody was trying to come for my man in the comments. And I had to slice the bullet on my ass in the clip. Hey, on the thumb. I had me feeling like a fire hydrant in a room full of dogs. So come now. Shit, no tough talk. Things you can't. We all just get along. Ladies when the mic's on. Like this song, my thunder to the stutters in the future. We counted the same ways. We both speak with our hands. Ripped from clicks, I probably wrapped circles around. Hey, bro, that was fire. Tried to grab my do-rag out my pocket, ended up getting burnt. He got me real good. Yeah, I felt like a basketball player when they get crossed up, like ankle breaker. I was just like, I was talking to my student after that mock, and he was just like, yeah, bro, it's okay, ring rust, bro. We are watching Retro Flow 10-year anniversary. Shout out to Retro Flow. That's family right there. It was a 10-on-10. It was like an unlimited crew battle, so we got like 10 people. Dosu put it all together, asked me to be on the team. He knew that I wasn't really interested in battling anymore at this point. I really just did it for him, my student. Shout out Wilson, that's my boy. Now that I'm like watching it now and like being interviewed about it, it's kind of revealing, just even looking at like the approach to the round, right? I'm not really focused on like trying to deliver heavy hitting moves. I'm free in the style. I spend most of my time articulating the lyrics, having fun, creating a great space, but still doing enough to like be competitive, right?
First of all, shout out to Dosu. We all thank Dosu for bringing you back out into the battles, of course. The second thing, now that we're talking about moves, we were just watching Hoorah at Rhythmic Damage, 2013 to now.
That's 10 years.
Yeah, let's summarize. Technique-wise, how has your approach changed in your mind when you look at this?
I would like to say I'm more comfortable in myself, but I feel like I've always presented that. I've always been myself in a way. Even like when you look at the Hoorah battle, I'm like pimp walking, smiling, having fun. I refine things, right, to where I can just throw them out whenever I need to. Instead of taking so much time to like pace and think about what I'm gonna do next and reset, I'm kind of just like, all right, I know I have this combo, I have this combo, I have this combo, I have this combo. I've never been a set person. I kind of just have a bunch of little moves that I put together and I just, in the moment, whatever I feel, I just pull it out. This battle, like, I wasn't really training. Like, I was hanging out, doing whatever they asked me to do it, we did it. I'm just myself. I still have the same level of control, but I think the injuries have taken their toll to a degree. I know what I can do, I know what I can't do, but I feel like it doesn't make me any less lethal because I had those 10 years experience. 10 years ago, I would have been throwing all the big moves because I felt like I had to. And then now, with the 10 years of experience in between, I understand how effective the smallest things can be.
You refine things, and you said to be able to just pull them right out of the bag at any time. That ties back into what we were saying before, the amount of time that you put into it. When you're describing that you don't use sets, you don't need sets if you have that level of muscle memory, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's the goal as breakers. Like, I understand the use of sets in like competitive setting, but again, this is an art form. It's about expression, all the stuff, the trigger words that we use. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not allowing yourself to explore and be free. Can you really say that you're like a master of your craft if you need to have it be from A to Z every time, or you won't be successful? No, you got to be able to do it forwards, backwards. Like, I used to tell my students this all the time. We would watch a clip and I would be like, yeah, like I was freestyling, but I know my stuff so well, I could watch this clip one time and I can do that entire round right now. And I would do it just to prove a point. I feel like, you know, that's the way it's supposed to be. You have to allow yourself moments to freestyle, to express yourself, because the music isn't always going to be the same. So it's not going to fit the set the same way. You might be doing moves, especially in crew battles, and this is something people don't think about. Say I'm battling with Tata. Tata does a lot of power. Say I have a set where I do all this power. I don't know what Tata's going to do, so maybe I have this set planned for the next round. Tata goes out and does 4 of the moves that I had in my set. If I go out there and do my set that I had planned, I'm not only disservicing myself, but I'm disservicing my team as a whole. So you need to be able to be adaptable within the moment. I feel like that's what makes a good warrior, for lack of a better term. You need to know what you can do, and you also need to know when to do it. I feel like that's just as important. And you got to give yourself that space to be able to do that. So say I come up with a concept, right? Something I do in battles, right? Once I have it, I'll probably practice it for like 2 or 3 days. But then after that, I know I have it and I just move on. A lot of the times when I'm in practices, I'm doing things that nobody's ever seen, things that I've never done, because I'm pushing the envelope, I'm pushing the discovery, because I feel like that's the way you get the best material out of yourself. You want to push your bounds, push your limits, try new things, take your time. You know, I tell people, don't go to like practice sessions and just cipher the whole time. It's not about just consistently throwing rounds and throwing rounds and throwing rounds. Maybe you go in there and you throw one round real quick, you just go really hard. You do a move that you like in that freestyle. You say, okay, let me step to the side. Let me practice this. Let me make sure I have it down. So I'll just cross step, do the move, spin back up, cross step, do the move, and then just move on to the next thing, because I now know I have that in pocket. I can pull that out at any time. I don't really spend as much time refining things as I do just trying to create. Hit it on accident, perfect it, put it in the repertoire. Next, again.
It's not perfecting it just for the sake of it. You have it, you can use it, now it's time to move on. So you're never too comfortable in just practicing the same things.
You know, that has its time, right? Drillers make killers, right? You got to drill your moves. If you feel comfortable knowing that you have that move, then feel free to move on and start doing other things, because the more you do that move in real time, it'll naturally evolve itself. If you spend too much time beating on it, it might not go anywhere. So just master it, get it, tuck it under the shirt, you got it, move on. When you pull it out, maybe when you're reviewing the footage, you're like, ooh, I could probably do this. And then you try that version at practice, master it, put it under the shirt, you got it, move on.
That all makes sense. Are there any exceptions to that in terms of certain moves that maybe like an air flare, you have to maintain it a little bit more?
When you said that, I was in my head like power. Yeah. Power is the only exception. Power, you have to drill it. And you have to consistently just push the bounds. Like again, like I was saying, measurable progress. In the beginning of January, you might have 2 flares. By February, you got 5. You got to keep pushing that. You got to start comboing it. You got to do flare, windmill, flare, windmill, flare, windmill, max out. Max out 3 times and then go flare, swipe, max out 3 times, and then just keep that regimented approach. Power really comes from just building up that control, right? You need that muscle control. So once you get accustomed to getting into that position from this other position, you know, from slamming my hand into the ground, my arm is weak because I've never done it before. But if I keep slamming it and slamming it and slamming it, eventually I'm going to get stronger and I'm going to be able to control it. Power is probably the only exception.
Are there any other thoughts that you have about this particular battle? This looked like some crazy footage.
Shout out to Wilson for like this nasty round. Oh God. That's kind of like a past, present, future kind of thing. You got like me and Knuckles there. We were like the guys in Philly at one point. You got the current people who's like Mach Wiz, Dosu, Psalm. I would even put them as like the future. But then you have Wilson, who's somebody who's super young. He's just getting his stride right now. His future is just unimaginable, especially with the way breaking is going.
We're coming to a close here, Box. This is a new segment that we're actually starting with the show. Current events, I try to pick out something that is relevant, that B-boys actually care about. Flea Rock made this Instagram post recently. He's suggesting that breakers, we don't need to and shouldn't be competing in every single battle. Week after week after week. We should carve out some time to just quietly, discreetly train and evolve so that the next time we come out, we have more impact, right? Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you think about this, so I'll just let you take the floor.
I think he's absolutely correct. Shout out to Flea. That's like my big brother OG, like always looked out for me, man. Funny story, first time I got on the plane to go to an event, I went to Outbreak 7 in 2011. And on the first day, I refused to shake anybody's hand until I shook his hand, because he was like one of those guys for me growing up. So like I'm like meeting people, I'm like, oh, what's up? And I'm like not shaking hands, and I seen him. Finally, I told him like, yo, bro, I've been waiting to shake your hand. I ain't shake nobody else's hand. And we ended up being cool from that day. You have to allow yourself to grow and then present that new version of yourself. You know, if you want to have an impact, what do we talk about when we're at events? When we see somebody, we're like, oh wow, they they've been in the lab crazy. If you see the same old, you kind of know what to expect. And even worse, they know how to prepare for it. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where people know how to prepare for you, it's not really going to end up good for you. So again, even in your own artistry, you should hold yourself to a standard of next event, I want to do something new. I want to like continue to build my legacy. You don't want to look at all your footage after 10 years and you're just like doing the same stuff. Because then like, what are you really getting out of it?
Doing the same thing year after year. Maybe you'll win battles on average a certain amount of the time, but still you're not evolving.
Yeah, and that's what this is about, man. It's about evolving. It's about showcasing you and your individuality. So push yourself, man. Give yourself time to like be in love with the dance and not be in love with the limelight, which is kind of hard. We come from these communities where we're not used to being celebrated. So then say you become a high-level b-boy and you're winning and you're being celebrated. That feels good. You get addicted to that. You start to fall in love with the limelight and like lose the love of the dance. You're not honoring the dance. He was spot on with that, and that was something that people needed to hear.
Maybe this is a minor point. Does this advice change for, like you said, younger guys? They're up and coming. They're getting to the point where they can win battles now, right? Is there something to be said about them trying to just get a rep and maybe they're winning a little bit of cash along the way?
Honestly, that's kind of like the gray area, right? I feel like usually the people who are in that position where they're gaining momentum, they're winning more frequently, they're starting to have their name ring bells, they're already at a point where they're training 4 or 5 times a week and they're pushing the bounds. So naturally, they're already coming out with new stuff every time because they're in the flow. It could be somebody who's just been winning off the same stuff, but it doesn't really last long. People who are generally coming up and they're starting to win, they're already doing what they're supposed to do. This is for more seasoned people. If you're somebody who's won consistently for years, doing the same stuff, it's okay to take a step back. Like, you'll still be who you are. Come back fresh, renewed, and just do your thing.
The last thing I have for you here is related to breaking for gold. Even if for those that might not want to participate in them, we all care about this particular topic because it affects the perception of breaking.
Absolutely.
How can we maybe get more involved? It might be more indirect. Maybe like for breakers, we need to think about how we can better respect the art form, be more professional as we're getting to a point where more eyeballs are going to be on breaking because of the Olympics.
Well, I mean, if anybody wants to get involved realistically and like have an impact and like make change, I would say there's many different departments and many different branches at Breaking for Gold. Reach out and see how you can get involved. I definitely agree with you that the perception of breaking from the general population is going to change. And I actually feel like that's the major benefit of the Olympics. Usually when people see breaking and they're like, older or something, they're like, oh, I thought that died in the 80s. You guys, oh, you want some cardboard? Realistically, this is an art form and a culture that we cherish and we respect. We pay our dues to it every day. And it's something that we hold in high esteem, right? Not that we need to validate it for them, but to just make it seem that it's not this very niche thing that's underground. We have to be able to present it in a way to whereas they can actually learn the vocabulary. Oh, like this is a flare, this is a windmill, this is footwork, this is that. Oh, the goal of dancing is to do this, right? When you put it in that framework, it's a lot more digestible. It'll be legitimized in a certain way. Once we have it placed on the Olympic stage, this then opens the floodgates of funding for like programming. I don't know if other people work within the arts hip hop space outside of just like breaking and jams. I'm somebody who believes in working in like inner city communities, using hip hop and art to like impact the lives of people because I was supposed to be a statistic. So then when we have it on the Olympic platform and it's now a nationalized program or sport, we can get funding for this because think about it in terms of sports, right? Not every kid is going to grow up to be 6'5", a school scholarship or something like that, or even just be able to partake in that activity for long. AAU basketball, there's a lot of fees associated with that falls onto the parent. But if we can present breaking in a way to where it's like a perfect financial alternative, it has all of the same things. You're building leadership skills, communication skills, you're learning to work in a group setting, you're learning to be competitive, you're learning to hold yourself accountable and develop and grow as a person. If we can do that at a lower price point, and it's open to everyone, boom, there it is. We can get the funding to make something like that happen. The Olympics is super important for that reason alone, because we can use that as a vehicle to help change our communities. I see a lot of people online for years have been arguing about whether it's called a sport. Look at like breaking as like a 5-lane highway, right? You can have all different types of events. If you want to be competitive, you can go the Red Bull BC1 route and just do stage battles or Undisputed or things like that. If If you want to do like the crew thing, you can do the crew thing. If you want to just cipher, you can cipher. If you want to just practice, you know, if you want to just be on some cultural stuff, you can do that. Why is it that once another lane is added that can honestly benefit everybody else and you're not forced to participate and it's every 4 years, why is it that we attack it? Hip hop has always had like a self-destructive nature in a way, and it kind of like pisses me off just because of a word like calling it a sport when it has a sporting element to it. We have scoreboards now, you know what I mean, that have been implemented in judging systems, all of that. There's a sporting element to it that you can't ignore. It's an art form, but for the benefit of all of us, let's let that realm be that realm. That is 20%, not even that of what we do in total.
5-lane highway, I like that analogy. This particular lane as it relates to the Olympics, you're saying it plays a very important one for involvement for our youth and such.
Yeah, because think about what the alternative is. Using myself as an example, the neighborhood where I'm from, it was nothing good coming from like what I was doing. I grew up in an after-school program at a school I didn't even go to. Remember, again, I had dropped out at this point, right? So my friend Stefan, shout out Stefan, he had took me to South Philly to go to a breaking practice, and I had never even been to South Philly at that point in my life. And I'm like 16. I go down there, I find this after-school program, it changed my life. I was there every day of the week, Monday through Friday, in a controlled environment after school, which is when a lot of the dumb shit happens, right? I'm there 3 to 6 every day working at something. I'm building relationships with people who have now been my friends for about 15 years. You know, some of my closest friends, my brothers, you know. Even the people who weren't breaking, we still have those relationships because of that space. I can only imagine what I would have been doing from 3 to 6 every day. And it only takes one bad decision to change the rest of my life. Hip hop saves lives, man, and we got to use the tools that we have.
Now, to get to that point, you used a couple words. You said legitimize breaking, basically, make it digestible, educating people on what a flare and a windmill is and being on beat and such. Do you have any idea of what that looks like in terms of how to implement that?
Promotional bits, you know, commentators, different things like that, right? Because
people stepping up.
Yeah, exactly. People stepping up. Because think about it like this. When you have sports, you don't really learn the terms of sports unless you've either played it or somebody explains it while you're watching it, right? So when you're watching breaking at the Olympics and you have like cultural commentators, like people who are of the community and they're commentating properly and they can explain what's going on, right? That's how people start to learn the vocabulary. And then you start to do profiling on different B-boys or B-girls, you know, so then we can identify with them and then people start to feel attached to them. They start to be attached to the story. That is how you build that bridge of understanding. Maybe if they saw it on the Olympic stage and they started to understand those things, maybe they could talk to their kids about it. Say, oh, have you ever heard of a flare? Look at this. This is a flare. And then that kid is going to see it. That kid's going to try it naturally. And then that kid gets a hunger for knowledge and just starts to do their own research. And then the rabbit hole begins, you know?
Cultural commentator. I haven't heard that one, but that's precisely what it is. That's precisely what the bridge is.
You can't just plug and play a celebrity, right? And you've seen that. They try to use celebrities sometime to create a draw, right? But at the end of the day, certain setups are still businesses, right? If you give people the opportunity to shine from within the culture, it's gonna just have that much more of a significant impact because they'll know what they're talking about as opposed to trying to fake it. Infamous J-Lo, windmill on the elbow.
Getting people to be engaged in the story of a particular dancer, maybe.
That's the most important.
That's how you're creating the fan base, too.
Yeah, absolutely. No one identifies with a person strictly off of their skill. Well, let me say not nobody. That is a thing. But what draws you to becoming a fan of a person is to get to know the person. Day in the life video or something like that. You know, you see thousands of corporations go out here and sponsor athletes and do profiling content because they're trying to draw their fan base in, right? They know fans are just hungry to learn more and more about this person because they identify with this person. Think about the impact that people like Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson had on people who didn't even play basketball. They saw themselves in that person because of their mindset, their beliefs, how they carried themselves. It's one thing to just watch somebody dance and now you're just like a moving body, but you don't know that person's story. We were just doing this interview, you didn't know my story, and then it just made what you saw even more impactful. Somebody like Pepsi, a black woman coming from Indiana that had a spot on the Olympic team, lost her spot, and is now building her way back up. And through the years, you can see her progression, how she got better, and she gets closer and closer every time to being like crowned the champion. That's a story. That is something that people will believe in, and someone that they'll support. So we have to give them that opportunity, and I definitely feel like that is like in the top 3 things to do.
We're gonna wrap it up here. I just want to thank you again so much for your time today.
Hey, thank you, man.
I hope you enjoy Detroit, and I wish you all the best in the future. Hopefully we'll cross paths soon, right?
Thank you, man. Philadelphia Flav, Bred to Burn, Hip Hop Fundamentals.
So we're out of here, guys. Peace.
Peace.